Righto, righto! You guessed it, it's another edition of the Do-It-Yourself Workshop. Last winter, one of our members purchased a new house. This house water supply comes from a well. As a requirement for the home mortgage, our member was required to have installed this huge 350-gallon holding tank. Since time was of the essence, the workshop installed the tank and all the necessary accessories and had water flowing within a half a day. As seen by the photo, obviously this was a temporary setup and not a permanent setup. Recently, workshop members reworked this job into a more permanent setup. The permanent setup is far neater, more compact, and takes up far less space. Here is a quick overview of the project: the pressurization system, the tank itself, the tubing, a dirty filter just hanging in midair. Looking down inside the tank, we see the high and low water sensors. We will start our draining process by opening the valve on the pressurization system. Next, we will open the electrical connection unit and photograph those connections for future reference. We will now electrically disconnect the entire system. The pressurization pump can now be disconnected. Here we see the pressure tank. Inside this unit is a rubber bladder that is inflated, pressurized. The purpose of this unit is to maintain a steady water pressure throughout the entire system, so that when you open a faucet or run the dishwasher or take a shower, the water flow is consistent. There's no fluctuations. We are going to drain off the remaining water in the holding tank. This tank has only been in service for about a year, but you could see the amount of sediment that has been accumulated in that short time. Here we're pushing the tank outside. With the tank removed, obviously we could see that the walls need some improvement. And what we'll do is we'll clean the entire area and paint the walls. With the walls painted and the area cleaned up, we're now ready to reinstall a new tank. First, we bring in concrete blocks. The blocks will act as a solid base so that we can set our tank on. First, look at our new 150-gallon tank. All of our new fittings must first be prepared by wrapping them with plumber's tape. We use this tape to ensure a perfect seal so that our joints do not leak.
Threads into plastic threads.
Here's another fitting that we're taping. When you use this tape, you want to ensure you apply the tape in the direction of the threads. And this is so when you start threading your fitting, your tape doesn't unwind. With all of our fittings and a valve installed and hand tightened, we will now use tools, wrenches, to make the final tightness adjustments. Notice the line diameter reduction from our holding tank to our valve. With our tank shutoff valve connected, we can now reconnect to our pressurizing pump. Here we see a view of what's happened so far. We will use this plastic rod that was provided with the tank to mount our sensors on. The sensors are attached to the rod, but are free floating, as demonstrated here.
So it will turn on right here. So I would still have 75 gallons of water in there when it turns on.
We'll use zip ties to hold the sensors to the rod. Listen closely, and you can hear the sensor clicking on and off.
Okay, go.
Our electrical connection wire must go inside the rod.
Mm-hmm. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
So in go the sensors, and we place the lid over the holding rod, over the anchor rod, and screw the lid down. With our electrical wire sticking through the tube, we now make our electrical connections. Here we see the actual line entering the house from the well. The line from the well must now be connected to the actual holding tank. But before we do that, we have other plans in store. We have decided to construct a legged shelf to be placed above the holding tank to conserve space.
Good?
Our rough filter is connected to our shelf. The filter hangs below the shelf, so it's accessible to change the filter element. Using PEX fittings and the special tool to squeeze the rings and attach the tubing to the connection, the tubing is squeezed tight with the special tool and run to the filter. From the filter, the tubing is then run to our holding tank. And here is what we have so far. If you can remember from the beginning photo, we had this big coil of tubing that ran from the holding tank to the pressurizing pump to the electrical control system. This setup was far too confusing. Our pressurizing pump is a gravity pump, which means water must flow into the pump. The pressurizing pump must set below the tank, but the pump does have head pressure, which means we can pump water up to the pressurizing unit. That means we will mount our pressurizing unit on the shelf above the tank, saving a considerable amount of room. And here we are. A nice, clean, neat finish, painted walls, loads of space conserved. With the new filter installed, all that remains to be done is to activate, energize the circuit. And here we are. We are now up to pressure. This system is beautiful. I do want to include one closing note. This filter is one of 3 filters. This is the rough filter. This filters the incoming water from the well. Beyond the work we did are 2 other fine filters that make the water sparkling clear. So the workshop has gone from this, a temporary setup, to this, a nice, neat, permanent setup.